Hello, good day to everyone. I'm Dr. Mark Anthony Leviste, a member of the ASMPH batch of 2013, currently a medical officer 3 at the Health Facilities and Services Regulatory Bureau of the Department of Health. And I'm here to discuss to you today the basic concepts of health policy. To begin my lecture, this is the outline of my presentation. So I will be first defining what is a policy or what a policy means, and then going specific to what is a public policy, then a health policy. What are the types of health policy by its nature and its function? And then we will go to how these policies are made. So I will be discussing to you the policy cycle. And briefly, I will be um, sharing you information on how a bill is formed into a law. On the conclusion, I will be discussing to you the factors that affects the policy or policy making process, and the conclusion for this lecture. So we begin by defining what is a policy. A policy is a course or principle of action adopted or proposed by a government, party, business, or an individual. So government policy, school policies, or a company policy. It often comes in general statements about priorities, written regulations or guidelines, and or standards that needs to be achieved. Policy comes from the words politie, an old French politie, meaning civil administration, Latin from Greek politia, means citizenship, politis, meaning citizen, and polis, from polis, meaning city. Public policies has been defined by differently by many scholars. Thomas Dye defines public policy at what government do, why they do it, and what difference it makes. Harold Laswell defines public policy as a projected program of goals, values, and practices, while David Easton defines public policy as impacts of government activity. Austin Ramsey, on the other hand, defines public policy as a selected line of action or a declaration of intent. James Anderson gives a more detailed definition of a public policy, which is purposive course of action followed by an action or a set of actions in dealing with a problem or matters of concern. As you can see in the slides, public policy often is a process where it's being done by the government, and the process entails a projected program, or there are activities that it being involved in order to address or to solve a problem, and this action can be viewed that there would be a difference in the outcome. Health policy, on the other hand, is defined as covers courses of action and inaction. So a health policy can be you do not do this, okay, that affect the set of institution, organization, services, funding arrangement of a healthcare system to achieve special health goals. As health outcomes is influenced by determinants outside the health system, health policy also covers actions of institution external to the healthcare system. Case in point, COVID, diba? COVID, use of face shield, use of face mask, those are health policies. Okay. Um, the um, that is the top of mind that I can think of, no? Because what affects the tawag yung economic perspective, no? Environment perspective. Yeah, those are determinants outside the health system, but they have an effect to the healthcare system. Health policy, it involves made mainly by the government, but the private sector has also policies as well. Mga HMO, those are private sector health policies, no? Insurance, yan. But for this activity or for this lecture, we will be more focused on public health policy or health public policy, whatever it is. So types of policy issuances. Okay, these are the examples, no, of policy issuances given its nature. Okay, first is the Republic Act. This is termed usually as the law or the act creating ganyan ganyan. So Republic Act, most common or the most sikat, famous of the health policies at this day and age is the Universal Healthcare Act or the RA 11223. Okay. Usually, these are the laws that are nationally effective. They mandate, penalize, and appropriate funds. Now, other sikat or famous health policies include the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act of 2012, HIV/AIDS law, no, yung bago. Ang maganda dito sa HIV/AIDS law was pwede nang i-cover ng HMO yung mga sakit ng mga kapatid nating PLHIV or persons living with HIV. Dati hindi eh, but with the HIV law, no, yung bago, they are now covered, di ba? Ganda. Ang galing. Health policy pa rin 'yon, di ba? So the approving authority of this type of issuance is the President of the Philippines. So they sign. The RH law was signed by the late President Noynoy Aquino. So as the HIV/AIDS law din ata, if I'm not mistaken. UHC Act, of course, kay President Duterte. Yung iba pang Republic Act na health-wise, Generics Act during the time of President Cory Aquino, the late President Cory Aquino. The PhilHealth, the creation of the PhilHealth, 1995 yon, during the time of President Fidel Ramos. Okay. Executive order, on the other hand, or rules are regulation of a general or permanent nature, implementation or execution which is directly made by the president under his or her statutory authority. So some EO executive orders have an effect of an RA or Republic Act. Example, the Milk Code, Executive Order number 51. Other executive order that is a health policy, is the re-engineering of the Department of Health, or the Executive Order number 102, series of 1999, signed by President Joseph Estrada. The executive order, what is the difference now on the executive order and the Republic Act? The executive order is primarily stems from the executive branch itself, no? While the Republic Act is the legislative branch of government is involved. The bill usually it comes from the Congress, sometimes comes from the House first, then to the Senate. Since we have a bicameral Congress, usually it's come from the House, then to the Senate, then to the President of the Philippines, or sometimes there is a simultaneous bill coming from the House and the Senate, House of Representatives. Okay. Then yon. But both are being approved by the President of the Philippines. On the other hand, administrative order prescribes policies, rules, and regulations and procedures promulgated by the Department of Health and other government agencies in accordance or pursuant to law, can define policies in absence of a law. The implementing rules and regulations of the RPRH law, the AO or the IRR on the UHC Act, it comes in the form of an administrative order. Sometimes it's multi-department. There are a lot of departments, usually two departments, but more commonly, only one department issues the AO. Okay. So sometimes you hear the words joint administrative order. Yon. No? Pag joint administrative order, there are two or more national government agencies. No? Other examples of executive order and administrative order. Executive order number 118. Familiar? Executive order 118 series of 2020, or the reimposition of, no, not reimposition, the imposition of price cap in COVID-19 tests. Okay. Then there is a joint administrative order. The EO says that uh, the primary responsible for monitoring the prices of COVID tests are the DTI and the DOH. Now, the administrative order is a joint administrative order on the procedural guidelines on how the EO 118 will be rolled out. Okay. So, approving authority, sometimes the President of the Philippines, but more often than not, it's the department secretaries. Okay. Since under the executive government, executive branch of the government. Other administrative issuances, including department orders, circulars, memoranda circulars, yan. In DOH kasi, we have these types of administrative issuance, no, in accordance with the rank, no, in scope, no. In other agencies, no, there are PhilHealth circulars, the FDA circulars. FDA circulars and PhilHealth circulars, usually these are regulatory in nature, no. NNC governing board resolutions, department dangerous drugs board regulations or resolutions, yan. The approving authority, usually the department secretary or his or her representative, and or agency executive director. So the FDA director general can issue the FDA circular on the certain drug or medicine or toys, ganyan, radiation, or his or her representative. So from now, what I just mentioned are these are the national administrative issuances or policy issuances. There are also local government issuances, no, that are health or that affects health in nature. So mga policy sa local. Just like the President of the Philippines, the local government or local chief executive, the governors and the mayors can also issue executive orders. Okay. The smoking ban in Davao City was penned or issued by then Mayor, our current President, Rodrigo Duterte. No, this was the pattern of EO 26 series of 2016, or the smoking ban nationwide. The local government issuances are effective only in the jurisdiction where the local government is. Now, if the rule is EO in Davao City, it's only effective in Davao City or in Iloilo City or in NCR, or no, in maybe in NCR, no. Case in point, the mayor of Manila, Isko Moreno, had this issuance on health on face shields, but in the nearby cities they haven't yet issued their um, their particular administrative policy issuance on the use of face shields. So maybe in Manila, you can now go into malls without face shield or into establishment without face shield. But when you go out like in Quezon City or in Nabotas or Malabon, they may require you face mask or face shield. So now we go to the types of policies in terms of function. No? So there are four types of policies in terms of functional types of policy. First is the constituent policy, connected mainly to the development of new departments, internal distribution of funds, and rules for public servants. Constituent policy usually is divided into two, structural and procedural. Structural policies are policies related to institutional mandates, structures, and function. Examples are the Republic Act on Renationalization of Government Hospitals, Department Order on Institutionalizing and Strengthening the NRL or the National Reference Laboratories in the Philippines. This is the Department Order number 2020-0820, or the Department of Health on Formula 1 Plus for Health Strategic Execution Plan for 2019 to 2022. This is under the DOHDO, Department Order number 2019-0302. On the other hand, procedural constituent policy are policies governing operations of government institutions. So examples of which are the IRR of Republic Acts. Okay, so the um, Republic Act on RA 11223 or the or no 113332 or the mandatory notification of public mandatory reporting or notification of basta yung mga disease ganon of public health concern. Yan. May IRR yan. Before COVID, wala pa si COVID, hindi siya before COVID, hindi siyempre kasama si COVID dun sa mandatory reporting ng diseases. So with the COVID pandemic last year, the DOH has issued the administrative order including na stating that the COVID-19 disease is now included as one of the notifiable diseases in the country. Next, distributive policy involves provision of public goods and services to all in the nation with the help of public funds. So, department orders on the reallocation of funds for hiring additional human resources for health in response to COVID-19 pandemic, whether it's in the hospital or in the laboratory. Still, there is distribution of public funds. Next, regulatory policy. Well, this is close to my heart because I am in the regulation. So regulatory policy imposes restrictions or limitations on the behavior of individuals or groups. Case in point, DOH Admin Order number 2012-0012 or the new classification of hospitals and other health facilities in the Philippines, as well as DOH number 2020-0047 or the licensing guidelines on the primary healthcare facility. Yon. So, marami pa tayong DOH administrative orders dyan. Aside from the DOH, the PhilHealth also issues regulatory policies. Remember, there was one fiasco back in 2016 or 15 that ophthalmologists tend to have more than 20, 30 cataract surgeries. Then because of this, PhilHealth issued this cap or maximum operation or cataract operation of this ophthalmologist to 50 cataract operations per month only. Okay. Regardless of institution. Example, kunyari ako isang ophthalmologist, may 5 akong ospital, yan. Basta kahit saan doon sa 5, basta ang maka-50 ako, cut off na. Diba? PhilHealth yun. PhilHealth policy yun. Other than that, yung PhilHealth na accreditation ng PhilHealth, no? There's basic and advanced accreditation. So, ang alam ko sa basic accreditation, basta may license to operate siya ng DOH, accredited na. Then, imo-monitor sila ng PhilHealth if indeed sumusunod sila, no? Para maroon sila ng pa-reimburse sila ng PhilHealth. Lastly, and this is I think the most controversial one, is the redistributive policy. This shifts allocation of wealth, income, and property from one group to another and often involves caste conflict. So national policy that all policies national policies that all indigent population, and all indigent population are automatic PhilHealth members without payment of premiums. Di ba? Automatic PhilHealth member ka. Tapos pag nagkasakit ka, punta ka sa ospital, no balance billing. Di ba? Kasi indigent. Pero yung pool of resources is the same resource coming from those who are also paying premiums. Di ba? Tulad natin. Mga self-employed and employed, kinakaltasan tayo buwan-buwan. So this goes to the same money pool or money resources. So now we go to the process on how a policy is being created. So as you can see in this slide, this is a five-step cycle, which is called the policy cycle. No? This is usually a political process through which most of the public policies pass over the course of their lifetime. Meaning, one way or another, nandyan yung pinagdaanan niya ng mga public policy. So we'll discuss. The first step is the agenda setting. Agenda setting is a set of political controversies that will be views as falling within the range of legitimate concerns meriting the attention of a polity or yung gumagawa ng policy. The agenda setting is usually a result of 3 streams, no? The problem stream, the policy stream, and the political stream. Problem stream, how a problem is defined. So, if may problema, yon, agenda na kagad yon for possible creation of a policy. Next, technical feasibility of the proposed solutions is dun naman sa policy stream yon. Then lastly, political stream. Ano ang sikat ngayon? Yon. The national mood, public opinion, and other factors that would determine if the proposed solution will become a reality or not. In short, kung ano ang in. Diba? Kung ano ang in, kung ano uso, agenda yan. Tingnan natin, papatok ba yan? Yan. So, kahit hindi sa health, kahit in all other economic policy or what, yes, this is the process. So, agenda setting, it sets the tone. Ano nga ba yung kailangan natin? What do we need? That is the agenda setting. Next, policy formulation. Akala nyo madali. Hindi. Susulat lang ako ng draft, papa-approve ko kay SEC. Okay na ba yon? Is that the policy formulation? Well, it depends. Sometimes, the cycle is just, you thought it's just this simple, but it's more tedious pa. Especially at this part, no? The policy formulation. Usually, this is the policy adoption, a passage of legislation designed to remedy some of the past problem or to prevent some future public policy problem. Result of a multitude of forces that affect policy outputs. The policy formulation, by the name itself, you've already formulate the policy. But it is not that simple. No? I have this pen, I have this already, I have this agenda. No? Ito ang problema natin. Then, gawa na tayo ng solusyon using a formulate, we write. Okay. Case in point, ano tayo, steps tayo. We have the IRR already, no, of the UHC Act. Okay? Then we go to agenda setting. We need the guidelines for the implementation of the UHC Act. Okay, next. That is already the agenda. So policy stream, technical feasibility nun, and political because yun yung kailangan, yun yung national mood. Sikat ang UHC, di ba? Ayun. Now, policy formulation. O, gagawa na tayo ngayon ng IRR nung UHC Act. Okay. So, di ba nung, sorry, we have this series of meetings from different stakeholders. Okay. So what do we think? What we think we need? What do you think we need? And this is we meet halfway or we agree on this one. Then we write the draft and we approve the policy or the secretary approves the policy. Diba? So yun yung policy. So we have TWG or yung technical working group to write the policy. Then we have public consultation. Magkaiba pa yun. Yun. So this is part of parcel of the process. Okay? Of policy formulation pa lang to. Sige, magbibigay ulit ako ng example. COVID laboratory. Yan. Close to heart. Okay. Now, we are currently amending the COVID lab licensing guidelines. Okay. So, the agenda was, there was a problem in the implementation of the previous AO, of the current AO. No, hindi pa naman previous kasi yun yung existing ngayon. AO 2020-0014. Nagkaroon ng dalawang amendment kasi nag-change. Diba? So agenda, kailangan natin 1 year after, kamusta? Yun. Policy formulation, currently we are in the I am a member of the TWG on technical working group of the COVID laboratory. So we already had 3 meetings for COVID laboratory. We air our concern para maging ako what I felt on the ground as the monitoring team. Then we also invited as members of the TWG meeting those laboratories, yung mga pathologists ng mga labs, no? And some experts. Then so TWG meeting, then we draft the policy, then we subject it to a public consultation. We hear their side, how they gonna react on it. Then once everything's said and done, okay na, planchado na, papipirmahan na kay SEC. No? So okay, napirmahan na ni SEC. So na-formulate na ngayon yung policy. Okay. The next step is the policy implementation. Policy implementation is the most important part of the cycle. But this is being overlooked by those who implement the policies themselves. Okay. Usually this answers what happens after a bill becomes a law. Okay. Oh, we already have this policy. Oh, now, what now? Okay, policy. So, the implementation-wise, sometimes, more often than not, dito lumalabas yung, ano ba yan, ang hirap, ano ba yan, bakit ganyan? Yun, makikita yung maraming problema. Diba? Ini-implement mo na ngayon yun. This series of decisions and actions directing directed toward putting an already decided mandate into effect. I-implement mo yung ginawa ninyong policy. Then, during implementation, the next step would be evaluation. Usually, 6 months after or a year after, you evaluate the policy. Is it really effective? Did something happen? Uh, there was an improvement ba in the implementation with the new standards? Ganon. What happens as a result of the policy? Nagkaroon ba ng yung health outcomes nag-improve? Yon. So those are parts of the policy evaluation. Actual impacts of legislation or to the extent to which the policy actually achieves its intended result. Again, agenda setting. Ito yung problema. Pagdating sa policy formulation, sige, ito yung gagawin natin para ma-address yung problem. So meron kanyang mga points, no, para masabi mo na na-solve mo yung problem na nakita mo sa agenda setting. Okay, natapos yung policy, ini-implement mo na ngayon. O, sige, implement, implement, implement. Siyempre, meron guidelines yun. Now, policy evaluation is nakita mo ba na na-solve ba talaga ng policy na ito yung problema na nakuha mo during the first part of the cycle. Okay? Next. So, may evaluation ka ngayon. Next, you do either you policy change or you terminate the policy. Kaya sa book kasi magkahiwalay yan. But for the purposes of discussion, pinag-isa ko na lang yan. Kasi pwedeng you change the policy as a whole or some parts of it or may terminate the whole. Huwag na lang tayo mag-regulate. Parang ganon. Terminate mo na yung policy. So may change or terminate the whole policy or just a section of it. Case in point, during the time of the first, the AO on COVID laboratory, napaka-flexible natin, di ba? Maraming bagong lumalabas. Yung RT-PCR na tagal-tagal noon, mas bumibilis na ngayon. May cartridge-based na kung tawagin. So, new technology yon. So, yung AO ba, masascrap? Hindi. I-change lang natin yung into a way na papasok yung bagong technology. So, the end result of the policy depending on the evaluation. Then, afterwards, this can be the part of the agenda again, and it's a cycle. It's just one policy, pero the policy change or policy termination may be the cause of the agenda setting again to revert back to the cycle itself. So, nakita mo na, okay, sige. Kailangan i-amend natin to. Sige, amend. So, agenda setting yun. Agenda setting, then policy formulation, ito na yung amended sections. Yan. Case in point ng AO 2020-0040, nakadalawang amendment na yan. No? Una, yung reporting, series of reporting. Pangalawa, yung nagkaroon na ng container van. Dati, wala kaming regulation on COVID lab na naka-containerized van. Ayan. Since bago siyang technology or bagong perspective, sige, na-part siya ng agenda setting and then policy formulation, then implementation ulit. Okay, I hope you get that. And it's a cycle, meaning paulit-ulit. Kahit yung isang type lang siya ng policy. Yan, regulatory policy yon, di ba? So, ito, I will briefly run through it. No? How a bill becomes a law, the national legislative process of the Philippines. So Philippine Congress, ganyan. Legislator, senador, congressman. Yan. Those are legislators. May mga ganito, whether it's in Congress, it's in the House of Representatives or in the Senate. Sa local government, yung legislative branch, yung mga sanggunian-sanggunian, pwedeng magkaroon yan ng ganito din. May first reading, second reading, kaya almost the same sa legislative process, no? So first reading, referral to the committees, then second reading. So yan yung mga series of activities per step, no? Minsan, naririnig ninyo, the president certifies this as urgent. Ayan, yung mga budget, yung ano pa ba? No, usually nang sinacertify niya as urgent. Usually budget natin, yung General Appropriations Bill para maging yung budget for the following year. Pag sinabing urgent, ibig sabihin dapat mabilis, di ba? So, minsan, pag sinabing urgent, yung third reading nawawala. The second reading, on second reading, pag na-approve, hihintay lang yan ng few hours para makuha yung tawag dito, makuha yung mga comments from other legislators and then if-file ulit for yung second approval, i-approve na ulit yon. That is the yung parang pinaka third reading but will happen on the same day. On the same day. Kasi usually pag second reading, no, marami pang mga edited, ini-edit and then comments para sa third reading. Okay. Now, on the third reading, once na ma-pass on the third reading of the specific House or specific Congress, lilipat na yun sa kabila. Whether kung sa House nagsimula, lilipat na yun sa Senate. Kung sa Senate nagsimula, lilipat sa House. Then, once na mapasa na both, no? Pagdating sa kabilang House o kabilang bicameral, kabilang House, House of Representatives or Congress or Senate, babalik ulit yan doon. No, magpo-first reading, second reading, third reading. Now, once na-approve on third reading ng both houses, they will now go into a bicameral conference committee meeting. So, representatives from each of the houses or each of the Congress, magmi-meeting yan to discuss the differences of the bills that were filed. Then, pag nag-agree sila, isasabit na nila yung report, tapos ira-ratify nila sa parehong house, then isasabit na nila kay presidente for signing. No? Pag binigay ba kay presidente, automatic approved? No. Because the president has veto powers. Pwede niya sabihin na, ayoko. Hindi pwede yan. Yan, hindi niya mas-certify as urgent. Pumasa. Biglang, okay, pumasa na sa bicameral conference committee. Ito na po, Mr. President, for your approval. Hindi lang sabihin, ay, ayoko. Hindi. Tapos sasabihin siya, yun yung tinatawag na veto. Veto power. No? Minsan, the president signs it, pero meron siyang mga parts doon na vinito. No? Ibig sabihin, hindi magiging effective yon yung part na yon. Unless otherwise overturned by the Congress. Okay? But more often than not, pag na smooth sailing na, then the bill that was first filed in the Congress now is termed as a Republic Act. Okay? Kung hindi po pinirmahan ni Presidente, pasado na sa Bicameral Conference Committee, papasa na po ba yon? After 30 days, pag wala siyang ginawa, hindi siya nag-veto, hindi niya pinirmahan, pinatulog lang niya sa mesa niya, nakalimutan pirmahan o nakalimutan i-veto. Pagpatak ng 31st day, batas na siya. Republic Act na siya. Okay? Yun. So what are the factors or what are the factors that influence how policies are made? Of course, evidence, scientific, medical. Diba? Issue yan ngayon. Meron bang enough evidence to support the use of face shield? Okay. Next, socio-political. Mag-o-open na ba tayo ng borders? Yan. So, or level ano na ba tayo? Leveling. Level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1, bukas na ba yung sinihan? Socio-political and economic financial. Yeah. So, I'm down to my last few slides, no? So, what is the policy decision making? Choosing among a relatively small number of alternative policy options identified in the policy formulation process to resolve a public problem. When one or more or none of the many options that have been debated uh, is approved as an option, uh, is approved as an official course of action. More inherently, it is a political process. Lalo na sa public policy, no? It's more of a political process talaga. Decision making varies, no? Across decision makers and in the context that which they operate. Hello pandemic. Iba ngayon ang pagdidesisyon natin compared to previously 2019 or early 2020. Yeah. Decision-making process are also influenced by the nature of the decision makers. It varies from background, knowledge, value systems. Kung mapapansin ninyo, yung 'di ba meron tayong GMA economics nung panahon ni Gloria. Ekonomista si Noynoy pero iba din yung decision making ano niya. So background din 'yan, 'di ba? Knowledge. O na nakita natin how a mayor thinks, 'di ba? Ang akala natin lahat ay magagawa ni presidente yung nagawa niya sa Davao. But sadly, hindi niya na-achieve yung ibang napangako niya noong kampanya noong 2016. But then again, it varies nga no based on their background. Si President Duterte, more local siya. Diba, naging mayor, tapos vice, congressman siya for a time. So medyo localized ang ano niya, thinking niya. No? Unlike ni Gloria, ni GMA, na national talaga. Although meron siyang executive experience na sa executive branch, she was then assistant secretary sa DTI if I'm not mistaken noong panahon ni Cory Aquino. Yun. Si example na lang din, 'di ba? Decision making process of value systems, democracy nung panahon nung late 80s, ngayon iba na rin ang value natin, 'di ba? Value systems. So it depends from these factors. So in policy decision making, it is critical to have a clear understanding and full grasp of core issues or problems, goals and objectives, current situations, alternative options, stakeholders involved, and constraint to collective action faced by stakeholders. So dito mapapansin niyo yung um, dalawang steps ng policy cycle, no? Yung agenda setting and the policy formulation. Dito 'yon. Medyo mas ano dito, mas makikita yung importance nila dito sa mga 'to. So agenda setting, kailangan clear yung core issue problem kasi kung ano yung makikita na kailangan nating policy based dito, no? What will be our goals and objectives for this? Kailangan masunod natin yung example, dito sa amin, sa DOH, 'di ba sabi, kailangan mapababa ang maternal mortality rate. 'Yon. Yung infant mortality rate nung before 2015, nasa Millennium Development Goals 'yon, 'di ba, MDG, mapababa yung yung MMR at saka IMR. So more tayo na facility-based delivery, 'di ba? So paano tayo magfa-facility-based delivery? O sige, institute tayo ng health facility, improve natin, i-enhance natin yung mga facilities natin sa baba. Magawa tayo ng birthing home or birthing homes, 'di ba? So, um, para hopefully bumaba. Ang tanong, bumaba ba? Slight. Yon. But again, na-achieve yung goal, bumaba. Pero is it bumaba ba to the acceptable level? I don't think so. But still, we're doing that. So main actors, key actors, so the elite members of the government are the main players in formal decision making. Public managers for subject for the approval of the elite. Other actors such as professional analysts, issue expert, consultants, and lobbyists. O, di ba? Siyempre, elite members of decision making, of course, the president, the secretary, yun. Sila yung nag-approve eh, di ba? Public manager, yung mga project manager, yan. Subject pa rin ng approval ng taas. So in conclusion, yeah, I'm down to my last two slides. Conclusion for this lecture. So policy process is a more political, handled by more senior appointed and elected officials, but it's also technical. No? Requires astute political judgment, but depends on evidence and sound analysis. For policy making, that is something that public managers are best placed to offer. And rise the challenge if public policies are not to falter at the implementation stage. As I mentioned earlier, the policy implementation is the most important but neglected part of the policy cycle. Okay? So these are my references. These are my references from my lecture, from the lecture of my teacher in Ateneo School of Government. No, some of the slides were also came from the previous lecture of Dr. Lachica in ASMPH. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you learned something about health policy and policy making in general. And that I end my lecture and thank you very much.